I'll talk to you about penguins and pollution today. Good? Yes? You think that's correct? What does this image tell you? Am I really going to talk about penguins? Probably not. If I was saying the sentence somewhere in New Zealand or something, you could believe that. But for this audience who recently experienced a common event, this image tells something else. So you may or may not know, but we have seen some protests in Turkey, which I currently reside, end of May 2013. And everybody has their opinions about it. I do too. But regardless of that, when I was observing the whole phenomenon folding in front of my eyes, it was like being in a candy shop as a social researcher that deals with culture and communication. You see, you open your computer, you go to the events, and you are seeing this whole slew of images that's trying to tell you something. They're trying to convince you of their ideas. So I'm today going to talk about some things that struck me about this whole discourse of images and slogans. With due respect to the whole global TED audience, I'm not going to be doing the usual thing. I'll leave you with more questions than answers. I'm not going to be summarizing volumes of research in an entertaining manner. I will just talk to you about 3 things that these images made me think about. The first one that struck me with this discourse was the whole sheer eloquence of it. So eloquence, okay, I'll check my notes. Telling about yourself, so self-expression in a concise, clear manner, and very effectively. That's all eloquence is about. And when you are going through the images that you see during these protests, you see that the eloquence is the first one striking you. The whole, every image you see contains some kind of young, nice, fresh wit in it. And that brings some kind of hope to most people's minds and some kind of joy, just like seeing the first snowfall or something. It brings a smile to your face. You're happy about the whole discourse. It's Pascal that said, eloquence is, I'm suddenly louder. Pascal that said, eloquence is painting of the thoughts. And what I think the images of Gezi did is turn this saying upside down on its head, and it's actually telling a story with images rather than words, and bringing the painting towards telling the story and being an eloquent, nice speech on its own. Some of them are very minor things. You'll see on the top, it's just a couple of changes here and there on the signage. Some of them are very elaborate and very well thought through mockeries or signs, posters about the whole event. So the first question that I had about this whole thing is are the images better? Is that the reason people are using those more often than the words? So do we have an easier time as human beings processing and understanding and believing visual information? So apparently it was thought before, and it was asked before over and over again in the literature. So yes, apparently we do process visual information about 60,000 more faster than verbal information. And we do believe what we see much more easily than what we read. So that question is answered. I'm still going on with my questions. The second thing that struck me is how deeply culturally dependent most of the signs you see are. I happen to be lucky enough to be from a mildly multicultural family. I have a Belgian husband, hi honey, and 2 children who claim to be Americans. And so I'm with you guys, I'm in an international multicultural university, so every time I see one of the signs, I was tortured over and over again to explain what it means. So, for example, my husband knows exactly what those words mean in the one on your left. But his question was, what is it with the dark Jesus? So, trying to explain the images taught me a lot, that actually most of the images we use in our daily lives are very culturally dependent. I'll go through one example with you. So, seeing this, I had to explain this much information. So I'm supposed to give the listener the original image, talk about what a wholesome company that is. It's producing yarn, knitting yarn. How every child in Turkey knows about it, or every child who grew up in Turkey somehow knows about this image. I have no idea how. And the image is played to show gas mask and relate to the protest part. And it was brought about when there was a call for mothers, and the mothers started protesting. So you have to go through all these steps, give half of the history of a nation for just explaining one image. There are ones that I don't even know where to start from. So these are the ones I actually threw my hands up and said, okay, no idea. And there are actually ones, the one above there, Ekrem Samban, and about Drogba, I really don't know anything about, so I didn't even touch those. So even in the verbal signages, you have the cultural dependence. You'll see a US sign along with the Turkish sign over there. It does have, both have deep cultural components that each country member is required to explain in detail to be able to convince you of their point. So unless you grew up there, it doesn't translate very well. So my second question, although I'm speaking in a TED Global TEDx event, my second question is, can a movement be truly global? If we have to go through all these steps of explaining, and if everything depends on our common background, what we experience together, can we really have a global movement? This particular one attaches itself to the Occupy movements all over the world, which define themselves as a whole general movement of Occupy in 50-some countries. This is the most global we're going to get. Even this one is so local. You can be pessimistic and you can say, okay, we will never get there, we won't unite. Or you can say, okay, we now have the tools at our disposal, so we can actually do it. We're slowly coming together. Let's do something about the culture thing. So I'm not going to solve this question for you, but the second question I have is, how do we make events, or how do we make movements more global? The third one was humor. So the first days, images come up, and I feel pretty amused. You give a couple of smiles here and there, and then as days pass, I started noticing the proportion of humorous images used compared to the non-humorous ones, the serious ones, is high, quite high. So everybody's trying to be funny, and most of them are actually successful in doing it. So Again, being in an international setting, I started asking around. I've been in a couple of countries, I've seen a couple of protests. I haven't seen any humorous signs or images. I started asking around, not trusting my own opinion, and lo and behold, yeah, it is confirmed. Most of the time, similar protests are not all that accompanied by humor. So it must be something Turkish. Again, I'm coming back to the culture. Because, for some reason, we strike dancing and having a nice band play, and so we start this, especially political strife kind of things, from a humorous, fun point of view. Some authors combine that with the tradition of satire in Turkey. So when you're expressing political disapproval, apparently we're more comfortable as a nation to express it through humor rather than direct confrontation. So that might be it. I'm not sure. It could be that it's more effective. So do you want to read that sign, or do you want to smile and feel good about the cute penguin and change your opinion towards this person rather than that person? So maybe it's just sheer effectiveness that's attracting us. Humor does come up in other countries' discourse as well. These are 3 examples from US. And you understand a lot from the general nation's humor idea from their signs and what they find humorous. The ones before are not exactly in line with the ones that is talking about the portable LPG tanks that we have in our houses, which would take another, I don't know, 15 minutes to explain what it is. Or that refers to a particular song that most everyone knows within the culture, or a pop icon that most everyone knows within the culture. So the humor is maybe there because we're Turkish. What's the second option? Maybe it's an age thing. Maybe the previous generation was boring. This one just happens to be much more fun or fun-loving, right? So you see that in the humor that they use in their signage that's referring to the nice torture we put them through to accept them in our universities. So they're either referring to the Pythagoras theorem to save themselves from the cannon fire, or talking about this particularly solved for X, particularly loved pool problem that we expose them quite often in high school. So maybe it's an age thing. That continues true with some global touches that they have as well. So these are the things that are related to age, but most of world's youth would understand, I believe. So maybe age is the reason that we are seeing this phenomenon. So my third question is, what is behind the disproportionate use of humor in the Turkish protests? Is it the culture? Is it the age? Is there something else that's going on? Again, I'm not answering that. It's begging for a dissertation for all PhD students in the audience. With that, I'm gonna excuse myself. Thank you for listening.